Awesome. We are live. So welcome everybody. This is Alchemist Wealth Money Talks. I'm Andrew, and we are, for those who don't know, we are the founders and owners of Alchemist Wealth, but we have a wonderful special guest, Carolon Donnelly, with us today. And first I'll kick it to Fred to introduce himself, and then we'll learn a lot about Carolon today.
Yeah, no, Fred to the third, the other half of the Alchemist Wealth founder strength team. You can call us what you want, but excited to be here to have this conversation. I'm sure I won't speak for Andrew, but we've all burnt out at some point. So yeah, just excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, and we work with a lot of professionals in different sectors, and we have really detailed conversations with them, and we hear that they're exhausted, that they're burnt out, that they're end of their rope a lot. And so I didn't know that burnout prevention strategists exist. And when I learned that, I wanted to have this conversation. I think there's a lot of people who can be helped by the introduction and by the conversation. So Carolyn, I'll let you introduce yourself and let us know about you.
Happy to do that. My name is Carolon Donnelly. I am the founder of Carolon Donnelly Consulting. It is a burnout prevention organization. We specifically kind of deal with the coaching aspect and also some training aspects associated with having conversations about burnout in the workplace and the work-related pieces of burnout.
Awesome. And so I know that this came from a really personal place for you. So can you share your personal experience with burnout and those around you and how that shaped your mission?
Yeah, so I will talk about my first experience of burnout. And really what that looked like was that I was newly graduating college. I did what most college graduates do, and I went out and I found a job. And I found a job that I really loved. And in loving that job, I was really willing to work the late nights, work the weekends, you name it. We did it because I was so passionate about what it was that I was doing. Inside of that, what began to happen was, I remember one point in my career actually saying, man, I wish they had cots in the basement, because if they had a cot, then, in those breaks, I wouldn't have to go home. That should have been an indicator that I was on the fast train to burnout, but I just kind of kept going, and I was moving up the corporate ladder. It was promotions and awards and all of the things, and to all outside appearances, everything was going so well. Fast forward a little bit, and I got offered an opportunity to move, not even move, but to commute to a different state in order to kind of have another experience in the organization. And I jumped on the chance because, again, it was another opportunity to move my career forward. Fast forward a little bit more, I came to a realization that actually meant a 2.5-hour commute, which was brutal.
Wow.
More than that was the fact that in addition to the commute, it was also a job that I was not suited for. I was a people person, and I was crunching numbers all day long. So imagine that. And so therefore, what I came to a conclusion with really quickly was that the work was a mismatch for me, and I was in a place where my leadership was not one that I could talk to about what was going on. So from lack of focus to insomnia to being able to have some medical kind of things begin happening to me, I started burning out really, really quickly. That led to the fact that I wasn't able to get my job done, and they quickly realized that something needed to happen. So they sent me back to where I was before. And in sending me back to where I was in leadership, and I recognized that I was no longer an effective leader. Thankfully, they offered a severance package, and I left the organization, and I took an entire year to recover from just being completely crispy and fried. And I feel like that was the impetus, both from being an employee who was burning out and also being a leader who was navigating burnout. That kind of became the impetus to why it is that I kind of do what I do. But then more stuff happened in my life, but I won't go there. But yeah, that was a starting point.
And you mentioned when it crossed your mind that you were willing to recommend that they invest in cots and put those in the basement.
Yeah.
That should have been a sign on your track to burnout. Like what are some other common signs you would say, or some symptoms that people or you see for people headed towards burnout or that are burnt out?
Yeah. So it is, emotional exhaustion, right? Just really not having the emotional bandwidth to do or handle much of anything else. Cynicism is kind of a part of that, where like literally you just don't have anything good to say about the work that you do, and that cynicism really spills over to really every single other part of your life. Physical exhaustion, you literally again don't have anything in the tank at the end of the day, and so therefore coming home and just laying on the couch or just getting in the bed or whatever, binge watching Netflix just because you need an out. All of those things kind of happen. And then one of the other ones that most people don't talk about is like the reduced personal efficacy, where like you used to be the go-to person, right? You used to be the person who was like on top of their game, had it all together, all the things. And now all of a sudden you are kind of not feeling like you are capable of doing what you used to be able to do effortlessly. Those things kind of in addition to like, lack of motivation. And I'm not talking about like just one day. I'm talking about like every day you're coming in and you're feeling like, I don't know that I can do this. Coupled with some physical symptoms, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart palpitations, panic attacks, all of these kind of symptoms, IBS issues, all of these things are things that begin to kind of spell that there's something going on. Insomnia, you can't stop thinking about work. You kind of have that treadmill kind of going, all those things.
Wow. And research, indicates that women face separate challenges in the workplace. We work with a lot of women and they share with us the journey's different, the experience is different. How does burnout manifest differently for women, or does it manifest differently for women?
Yeah. So it depends, right? And by that, I say that if, say, for example, that woman is in either a role or is viewed as kind of the go-to person for folks to come and tell their challenges to, or they are in like a social worker role, or they are a physician or something like that, for which folks are relying on them to be emotional support for them, then burnout can really look like that. That emotional exhaustion piece could be greater or the biggest indicator for that woman because of the fact that she's being taxed so much from that emotional perspective. And so therefore, that's kind of one of the bigger things that many women would see. I think that the other thing that we have to recognize is that many women are kind of looked to as the ones that can handle or have those kind of more difficult conversations or more touchy-feely kind of conversations. And so therefore, in those kinds of roles, they are kind of put into these scenarios for which they're carrying the emotional burden of others. There's another piece I think that we often don't talk about, right? And I think a Time magazine article came out most recently about this, was this whole thought around self-silencing. And with that, it's really for many women, because of the fact that it's not looked upon as a thing that women do to speak up or complain or whatever, women will kind of be pretzeling in themselves around, should I say anything? Am I, am I supposed to, maybe I just need to suck it up or whatever. And so therefore they're not even bringing their voice to the table in some instances to be able to speak up and talk about these things just because of the fact that they feel like they need to simply toughen up. And so things like that are things that I often see in women.
Do you primarily work with women? I don't know, this is not on the list, but do you primarily work with women, or who do you work with?
So I work with leaders, and they can be women, they can be men, but a lot of women really resonate with this because they also have that tug of home and expectations of home, also kind of factoring into these things as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What type of strategies do you usually recommend? We'll start there. What kind of strategies do you usually recommend for people to prevent burnout or end burnout?
Yeah. So I'll start with the strategies for if you're in burnout, and then we'll talk about the preventative pieces. I say that it all depends, right? This is not going to be a one size fits all kind of thing, and it will depend on the stage of burnout that you're in. So if you are in the initial stages where you're kind of in this honeymoon stage where, you are loving work, all is well, you're a little bit stressed, but you're kind of coping. And, you're kind of, you're starting the burnout treadmill, but you're not fully burnt out yet. Then I would say that self-care kinds of things need to be a part of your regimen. You need to be making sure that you are kind of looking at and thinking about the 7 types of rest. Which one do you need? Are you getting other avenues to express your identity as a human being outside of work, right? So are there some balances to, you being, tech specialist by day, but then, you're a cellist by night, or something that kind of gives you energy, that kind of stuff. You're in nature. All of the things, meditation, yoga, all that is great when you're in that initial kind of stage of burnout where you're kind of tapping into these coping mechanisms. I would say that once you get to stage kind of 2 or so, where those coping mechanisms are not quite working and the stress level is increasing, and you're beginning to notice that there are things that are happening to your health, or your lack of focus, lack of motivation kind of is increasing, all of those things. That requires a more targeted approach, and you have to begin addressing the things that are burning you out. And I can talk about those in a little bit, but you need to be addressing some of the work-related factors that could be causing the burnout. Having conversations, being able to advocate for what you need, setting clear boundaries, all of those things kind of need to be taking place in that stage 2. And that's kind of where I spend a lot of my work, is kind of helping leaders and employees to be able to navigate. What do we do? How do we create a strategy that's going to actually work? How do we set those boundaries, etc.? Mm-hmm. When we get to stage 3, this is the part that's really scary, because it's at this point where people are no longer able to function. They're not going to work, perhaps. Depression and anxiety is completely taking over their life. They might be having suicidal ideations, all of these things, because it's gotten so bad that they are not functioning. And really at that stage, really you need to be having some significant interventions to be able to navigate that, and some significant life changes would be needed in order for you to be able to recover from that stage. Hopefully that's kind of helpful with those stages.
That does help. Stage 1, you mentioned 7 types of rest. I think I'm only aware of 1 type of rest, but like what are those?
Yeah. And I'm probably going to get these all wrong because I wasn't prepared for that. But it kind of deals with things like being able to have creative rest, right? Being able to tap into that other part of your brain. Again, if you're in tech all day or you're in finance, whatever all day, you need to be able to tap into some other part of your brain that allows you to be able to kind of get in flow and to be doing something where you're just letting out your creative juices. And that could be any number of things, piano, all the things. So there's creative rest. There is kind of rest that kind of deals with nature and being able to get out in nature, kind of developing that sense of awe, all of those types of things. There is rest that also needs to deal with the people that you're around, right? There are certain people that drain us, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And we need rest from those people, right? So that's a real
Yeah.
honest conversation that you need to have with yourself. But then we need those people who really replenish us and, recharge our batteries and all of those things. And so being able to surround ourselves with those types of folks is really super important. And there are some other types of rest. The where you can find this is a book called Sacred Rest. She kind of outlines the 7 types of rest, and I can include a little link if you all would like to have that, where it kind of outlines the 7 types of rest. But all of those are needed, and we just need to figure out at what point do I need what kind of rest.
That's awesome. And yes, we'll take that and put that in the notes.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry to put you on the spot on all 7, but I had that exact same question. I had not heard that before. But you did mention, working with leaders. I think there was stage 2, right? Working with leaders. What are some things, if you are in a leadership role, what are some things that you can do to create a culture where burnout doesn't happen, or where you identify and remedy burnout?
Yeah, that's so good. One, I think that leaders have a really significant role in helping to alleviate burnout, and so recognizing that is a role that you, in fact, need to play, that it's important not only to your team, but it's imperative as a business imperative, right? Because I think that sometimes leaders get nervous in thinking that, oh, this is kind of touchy-feely, I don't know if I can go here, or they kind of think, oh, this is for, this is an EAP referral and my job is done, kind of thing. And so first recognizing that this is really a part of who you are as a leader and what you need to do. And I would say that the next piece is this piece around creating a psychologically safe environment where people can speak up and say, hey, I'm having trouble with this, or to be able to help them honor the boundaries that they want to or need to set. Those types of things, being able to even know what's burnout signs might look like in your people, know that them being first in and last out is not necessarily a good thing. And you probably need to be having conversations with them around what's happening, etc. So I think that creating that psychologically safe environment where mistakes are learning opportunities as opposed to things that can't be tolerated, creating an environment where, we have enough trust where you can come to me and talk to me about, hey, this project is really wearing me out. I need to talk through what I'm doing and what maybe needs to change or whatever. And being able to be proactive as a leader in identifying some of the things that you might be seeing in your people and having conversations with them around what do they need, what have they tried, what else is needed, etc. What might be some of the pebbles in their shoes that might be getting in the way, those kinds of things. And then I think the most important piece is to be able to follow up with people after you've done that initial conversation, because that follow-up is so key. We can't have a one and done kind of thing. So those would be my high level tips.
think it's interesting because culture in the workplace, I think, is kind of shifting from the perspective, at least some places, work,
Yeah.
to taking breaks and self-care and use your vacation. But I think I've heard in a lot of places, like, that's what's spoken, but people don't take advantage of it because they're not used to it, or they don't take advantage of it because, yes, it's spoken, but like, we still need to get the work done. Like, how does that, how would you approach something like how does that show up for you? Like, you know what I mean? Just talk through that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of those espoused values of an organization where, you know, these are the things that we have on the nice plaque, that everybody, it's all nice and shiny. However, you know, when you have the real conversations, you realize that those things on the plaque don't mean anything. And I think that that incongruence is something that organizations need to be recognizing and to be bridging the gap so that there is less incongruence. And I would say that that kind of really begins with a leader one noticing that and noticing their behavior in light of that, right? So oftentimes people get their cues from their leaders, right? You can have the thing that says, you know, everybody leaves at 5 o'clock, but if your leader is there until midnight, you're going to be there until midnight because that's the behavior that the leader is telling you is okay. If in an organization you see that all the people who get promoted are in fact the people who are, you know, cutthroat, you know, like get it done at all costs, not care about the people, burn people out, and things like that. Then, if you're moving through the leadership ranks, then you know, you might adopt that behavior as a means of being able to kind of move through. So I would say that the organization really needs to take a serious look at the espoused values versus the actual values of the organization, and be able to have a conversation around, is this the kind of organization that we want to be? Does this attract the kind of people that we want to attract? And if the answer to those things are no, then what steps do we need to take in order for us to begin shifting the tide? And that's a bigger conversation, but that would be, that acknowledgement piece is the piece that I think is the first start.
Yeah, that's really good. And just extra question, because I've noticed that there's sometimes a difference in between cultures and how work is viewed, what hard work looks like, you know, threshold pains and hourly commitments. So how do you feel that shows up with, you know, folks from different places around the world or raised in different households when they bring those learnings to work?
Yeah, so this is really interesting and so good because I'm originally from Jamaica, and I know you can probably not tell by any accent that I have. And so one of the pieces that I often bring to the table is this identity level piece, and what you learned about what does it mean to be a good worker, a hard worker, or to be a worker, period, right? Because I think that some of this is ingrained in the way that we have seen work demonstrated in our lives through our parents, or, you know, people that we've grown up with, lived with, etc. And some of that unpacking again starts with that acknowledgement of, you know, this was the way that it was for others. And I need to be making a different choice for myself because I can see what the consequences of that was, perhaps that was for others that perhaps I don't want in my life. So it's a level of that, but also it's this interesting piece around self-compassion, right? Because I think that sometimes the voice of in our head is the one that keeps us on the treadmill, right? Suck it up, get it done, you know, You got to work harder. I don't care if it hurts. All of that stuff. We need to be able to kind of deprogram ourselves from some of that talk in order for us to even overcome burnout or get to a place of being able to prevent burnout. Because otherwise, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy around the fact that we will keep listening to that voice and stay on the burnout treadmill, regardless of where our next employment is. So
that's good.
How, because I think you hit on, if you're in burnout, what are some strategies?
Yes.
And I think we were coming to how to prevent it. And I guess this kind of ties into like, how do you get out of your own head, so to speak? And also like in relation to preventing burnout, like what are some different things or strategies to prevent burnout?
Yeah. So I think that the first thing with regards to the prevention of burnout, I think the first thing is the mindset piece, and recognizing that burnout doesn't need to be a part of your story in order for you to be able to get ahead. Right. And I think that that's an important narrative for us to hold on to, because I think otherwise we run the risk of kind of walking down the burnout route because we just assume that this is just the paying your dues or the price that you pay for admissions. So I would first start there with that. And then I would say that it's other things like being able to identify a company culture that is in alignment with the values that you have, in order to be able to know whether or not that there's a match, right? Because one of the research-based kind of causes of burnout is this like mismatch between the values that you hold and the values that the organization, kind of holds. And so in preventing burnout and thinking about that, you need to be making certain decisions around the work environment that you are wanting to be in, stay in, etc. Building boundaries and being able to make those boundaries known to others, and being able to kind of navigate some of that people pleaser kind of tendencies in order for you to be able to kind of make those requests known. Those are kind of some of the things. I would also say it's also this piece around that identity piece that I made mention of. Being able to recognize that work is not all of who you are, right? And so being able to then like pull apart the different parts and pieces of who you are as a means of being able to understand that just because things might not be going so well at work, you can still be okay in other parts of your life. You can still gain strength and joy and more kind of resiliency from other parts of your life, so that you can be at choice in the different other places in your life. And so I would say that burnout prevention also kind of has to do really with us being able to recognize that we are in control of our lives and being able to be in control of our choices. And so those are some of the parts and pieces that I would say, and taking care of ourselves, being able to recognize that some places might not necessarily be the places that we need to be in for forever, and knowing when we need to pivot and when we need to kind of do something different, and being able to speak up and advocate for ourselves.
That is so perfect. That is so perfect. We talk money scripts, and in the financial space, we talk about how you learned about money, and it's typically before age 10, and what your experiences were and what you believe.
Yep.
And so all of those things really bleed into work, because most people are working for money, right?
Yep.
And so, I love what you're saying about being able to decouple yourself or separate the different parts of you and isolate work, not as an identity, but as something that you do.
Yeah.
That's so perfect. As we wrap in, I know every time I hear you speak, every time I read your posts, I think to myself, the world needs to hear more of you. How can people find you? How can people follow you? Like what ways can people really continue to learn from you in this space?
Yeah, so follow me here on LinkedIn. It's you see my name, and then I would also say you can also connect with me on my website through our newsletter. It's Carolon-Donnelly.com, and so would love to be able to connect. DM me, all the things. So
All the things. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, your insight, and what you do. Right, this is a place that we see very deep need for folks to rewire and to be cognizant. And so we'll be following, we'll be watching, and for the folks listening, thank you for joining us for this version of Alchemist Wealth Money Talks. We'll be back soon, and have a good rest of your day.